Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So I thought today I would do another reaction video to one of Rami and Nate's tip videos that they have. I did one last time in one of my previous videos about keto, so I'm going to move on to the next one. I haven't listened to these yet, so this will just be my raw reaction. So I'm going to do the intermittent fasting one.
Save the best for last. Intermittent fasting is very controversial, and I know that. It is not a new concept at all. It's just been sort of rebranded, all right? It's become this new talk of the town. It's the most primitive way of eating, all right? We've been doing it since we were cavemen, and I think that's why it draws so much interest from me, all right? And so fasting is basically anytime you enter a very deep sleep and you're sleeping for an extended period of time, your body is entering a fasting state. All right, so what it kind of is, to be broken down morning style, is skip breakfast. It can be defined as that simple. Skip breakfast and then eat a decent sized lunch. All right, it is not considered starving yourself. Some people get it misconstrued of a form of starving. No.
So yeah, the concept of intermittent fasting is just that you're altering the window of time that you're eating in the day, and you're making it a smaller window. So at night when you sleep, you're not eating, so technically you're fasting. That's why it's called breakfast or break fast. It's your first meal of the day. So he's right, where if you don't eat breakfast, you are essentially extending that fast that you had started while you went to bed.
What is actually happening, starving is a completely different issue. It's when your body is completely depleted and it's breaking down your muscle tissues and your organs. Now, what's happening? While you are working through intermittent fasting, you are burning through energy forms that you have stored. So whatever stored fat and stored energy that you have, that is what your body is resorting to keep fueling and keep going.
Yeah, so your liver stores glycogen as well as your muscles, and overnight your liver does release some of that glycogen as glucose. Eventually it's broken down for energy to help keep your blood sugar stabilized throughout the night. And he's right, starvation is completely different. That's when you don't have access to calories, yeah.
There are many forms, there are a lot of different forms of intermittent fasting. 5 days on, 2 days off. You can do one full 24-hour fasting once a week. That's really hardcore. They're endless. All right, so the two I'm going to focus on.
Continue, Nate.
Is 16-8 and then the warrior fast. All right, so what does that mean? 16-8. All that means is for 16 hours of the day, you're not eating, and then 8 hours of the day, you are eating. All right.
Very straightforward.
16 hours seems like a lot to not be eating, but it's not. Whenever you're sleeping for, freaking 8 hours, possibly, however long you sleep, it doesn't come out to be that much. And then if you just skip your breakfast, if you have a very active morning, it's not a hard thing to achieve. And you have your lunch prepared and ready to go, you can easily go all the way till 11 or noon before you eat your first meal. And then in that 8 hours, you are just consuming gradual calories throughout the day to last you until you go to bed that night, all right? And as Americans, we eat too much as it is. We overeat. So
that's where intermittent fasting comes into play, is the idea that you're restricting yourself to a certain time limit. Like he said, there's 16-8. There's a bunch of different ratios and approaches to it, but 16-8 is the most common. So in that 8 hours, ideally you are meeting your calorie needs. For whatever goals you have, if you're trying to gain muscle, gain weight, then you need to be eating enough calories for that. If you're trying to lose weight, then you need to be eating enough calories for that. So it really depends on what your overall goals are, because intermittent fasting isn't a diet. It's not telling you what to eat or how much to eat. It's just telling you when you can eat. It's just an eating schedule. So that's where I would say there's some downfalls, just because a lot of us are very different in terms of our appetite. Some people wake up and food isn't the first thing that crosses their mind. I'm not one of those people. I wake up and I am ready for breakfast. So personally, intermittent fasting wouldn't be enjoyable for me, and it would probably make me feel miserable because I would wake up and just constantly be thinking about food, and then I'd likely stuff my face because I'm so hungry, you know? So it completely depends. Some people just don't really have a big appetite for breakfast in the morning. That's perfectly fine. Listen to your body and eat when you feel hungry. But some people struggle with excessive snacking, and that's a whole different issue that you need to be aware of and to dig deep on. And a lot of the times it's late night snacking that's the issue. So the idea is that if you have this window, you can't eat past X amount of time, like, oh, that should cut down how much you're snacking afterwards. But it could also fuel the fire, because when it's late and you're past your feeding window, you're entering that fasting zone, and all you're thinking about is how hungry you still are and thinking about the foods that you're craving, that can create a whole host of problems. Because when we delay our cravings or delay ourselves from our cravings for so long, all we're doing is delaying gratification. Eventually, because we're human, we're going to give into it. So I would say it takes a lot of soul searching to determine if intermittent fasting makes sense for you and your typical eating pattern. Let's see what else Nate has to say.
Skipping breakfast isn't necessarily a bad thing
Really not.
at all. Now blend that 16 and 8 with what's called a warrior fast. All right, warrior fast is you go all day without eating. Just picture you're a freaking Spartan warrior and you had to hunt all day and battle and whatever, and then you eat a huge meal at night before you go to bed. Like I said, I do kind of a blend of the 16-8 and the warrior fast, in the sense that once I've fasted for 16 hours and I've trained and I've settled down, I kind of eat my fruits, my vegetables, my grains, and my meats all throughout the day. And then towards the evening, whenever it's closing out, time to go to bed, that's where I'll eat a kind of a heavier carbohydrate meal, my egg whites, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, to kind of hold me over through the night. And I've noticed pretty great results from that. That helps me get my calories in to close out my day, all right? And overall, some of the perks of intermittent fasting overall is just you're looking at consuming less calories overall, all right? Because you're spending less time eating. And
that could be completely not the case for some people. As soon as that eating window opens up, and they may just go in and be like, I only have 8 hours to eat my calories for the day. So yeah, I feel like it could go either way depending on the person's history. I don't know why we love labeling the things that we do or the way that we eat, but again, if intermittent fasting makes sense not only for your appetite and your food tendencies, like when you typically eat, your work schedule maybe, as he was saying, maybe you have certain things going on throughout the day, it doesn't make sense to fast all night and have an 8-hour eating window that's also the same time as you're at work, because then you can't really eat when you're at work unless if you prepped everything ahead of time and brought it. That can create a lot of stress. So if it doesn't make sense for your lifestyle, then I wouldn't worry about trying to implement intermittent fasting.
Humans overeat too much, so that can't be a bad thing, all right? Chronic stress is extremely toxic to the body. We self-induce so much toxic stress, all right? Intermittent fasting is a mode of self-induced stress, all right? It is a very acute and short-term mode of stress that you are inducing on yourself. Now you might be thinking, why would I want to induce stress on myself? Well, that stress is the same as the feelings that you get when you're working out or an ice bath, all right? These are controlled stress responses, all right? And this acute stress response, it leads to overall good feelings, mental clarity, all right? You're releasing endorphins. It's gonna make you feel better, be in a better mood, bring up your metabolic rate, make you less hungry, all right? All of those things are just gonna lead to weight loss.
If you increase your metabolic rate, you'll likely have an increased appetite too, because your body is trying to get you to eat enough to fulfill that energy demand. But yeah, he's right where there's a lot of different stressors in our lives that can pile on top of each other, and it's really important that we're learning what those are in our lives on an individual level, and that we are addressing them, we are figuring out a way to manage them, and that we aren't just trying to function through it because we feel like we can. It really is important and detrimental to your long-term success and progress and weight loss. If you can't manage your stress, it's going to be a lot harder. That's why it's really important to make sure that the way you're eating isn't piling on extra stress where it's making you overthink things, you're overthinking your decisions, overthinking all the rules that you've applied to yourself. So start thinking about those things and how consumed you are with maybe rules or following rules and breaking them, guilt, restriction, anxiety, stress. Start thinking about all those things and how you approach your diet, because stress is something that needs to be addressed.
Roll, all right? You're releasing norepinephrine, all right? You're jacking up your growth hormone. Everything there is great. Intermittent fasting, the only con, I guess I'll say, is you got to be pretty mentally tough, I guess, to be able to stick to it. It is an acquired taste. It takes a little bit of getting used to, only because we've built these habits as humans where we wake up and we think breakfast. We just start throwing milk and cereal and granola.
If you're hungry when you wake up and you think breakfast, then eat. It's not the end of the world.
And Pop-Tarts and toaster strudels and muffins down our throat.
Now, addressing the specific food choice is a different battle. It's not bad to wake up and be hungry. That's completely normal for some people, but the actual food choices is something that we need to consider, and how we can build a more balanced meal that is lower in added sugar, saturated fats, high in fiber, and is nutrient dense.
Before our bodies have even woken up, our central nervous systems have even turned on, we're already throwing food down our throat. We haven't earned that, in a sense that we haven't burned any calories. We haven't done any work.
That I want to get into a little bit, just because I feel there is some societal pressure, or maybe it's on social media, where we feel like we need to earn our calories, and if we didn't do enough work in a workout, or if we have been at home all day, then we somehow feel like we're undeserving of food and we shouldn't fulfill our hunger cues, and that's not a good thing to ignore. Honoring your hunger cues and being in tune with your body and your appetite is a very important skill, and that's where you talk about intuitive eating, and intuitive eating can be a little abstract to people, that idea, but it really is that core knowing of realizing that what you're doing is right for you, that you understand your appetite, you understand your cravings, and you have done the reflection and the work to figure out how to navigate the challenges that you're struggling with. That's just my 2 cents.
Work. Our bodies don't need fuel yet, all right? So, it is an acquired taste.
We may not have done work yet as soon as we wake up, but like I said earlier, our bodies had already been releasing some glycogen, that stored energy throughout the night, to help keep our blood sugars normalized. So your body is looking to already refuel that or restore that. So that's why we wake up and we feel hungry, because it's been so long.
The first little bit you might experience headaches because you're deficient, you haven't eaten, so generally you'll get a headache. Now a good way to remedy that, caffeine. Have some caffeine, get your heart rate up, all right? That'll throw your headache away. My recommendation is just keep busy. Use your fasting time to be as busy as you can. Get your mind on product, get your mind on productivity, all right? Work hard, and don't even think about food. And then your fasting will be up, and it'll be time to start eating again, all right? So, that was 3 fad diets. I tried to get through them as quickly as I could, and just...
Alright, so just to sum up my thoughts about intermittent fasting, like pros and cons. So just like the pros, I guess, of intermittent fasting is that for some people who wake up and they're not already hungry and they feel like they have to force food down because breakfast is the most important meal, it definitely isn't. If you don't wake up hungry, then don't worry about it. So the concept of intermittent fasting can help you feel like the way you already eat is more normal. Again, the cons is that it just may not be realistic for many people, considering their appetites, their daily work schedules, their priorities, and also just their tendencies if they do like to snack. Snacking isn't a bad thing. We just need to plan and take it into account in our day as a whole, because everything is cumulative. Intermittent fasting isn't a diet. It doesn't mean that because you follow intermittent fasting that you'll lose weight. It all comes down to calories and how many calories you are consuming in that eating window that is the most important. So that's my little reaction to the intermittent fasting video. I again love Rami and Nate, and I think it's great that they're trying to make their audience more conscious of their health and start getting interested in their nutrition and moving their bodies on a regular basis. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time.